Coming up today on Raceline, the most recent first-time winner in the NASCAR Busch Series, Scott Riggs, talking about his fast climb up the NASCAR ladder. We'll preview the Napa 500 at the California Speedway with the defending race winner Rusty Wallace and an explanation of the traction control devices that apparently are being used by some race teams. Those stories, our fans forum, and producer's corner, all coming up today on Raceline. Now, here's Joe Moore.
Finally, Chevrolet wins a race, picking up the victory last week at the Talladega Superspeedway with the ever-popular Dale Earnhardt Jr. And now it's off to the West Coast. Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Moore. Welcome to this week's edition of Raceline. We're going to the California Speedway this week for the Napa Auto Parts 500 and the Auto Club 300 for the NASCAR Busch Series on Saturday. California Speedway is a beautiful facility. We've been racing there for 5 years now, and it seems like it gets better every time we go there. One man who really likes the place is Rusty Wallace. His team owner was the man who built the place, Roger Penske. Of course, now Penske and International Speedway Corporation together own the California Speedway. But it's the last place that Rusty Wallace won a race. Let's hear more from him in this week's Raceline X1R preview. Here's Dan Hubbard.
The Cup Series makes its way to earthquake country, but if you feel the ground shaking, it's the fault of 800 horsepower race cars rumbling their way around the 2-mile California Speedway for the Napa Auto Parts 500. This is the 6th time NASCAR has come to Fontana, and the track has plenty of racing on it. A second groove has developed, and drivers feel very confident going side by side into the 14-degree banking. Raceline spoke with defending champion Rusty Wallace, who has been winless since the last time he paid a visit to the palace that Penske built.
Well, it is the same car, but it's been rebuilt and it's been revamped and it's been updated. It's got a lot of horsepower in it going to California. The car looked great. I looked at it yesterday. But we go to every race thinking we're going to win that. It's just everybody always looks forward to going to a racetrack they won at. But I'll tell you, every single time you go back, it's always a major change, major change. The tires have been different every single race from last year, and it just drives me ape shit. But other than that, every time you come up with a chassis setup, you got to throw it out and build another one, and it's driving you nuts. But here I am again, chasing another tire and chasing the track. Well, we'll get it. We're tough, man.
As we said, Rusty Wallace won this race last year. Jeff Gordon finished second, followed by Dale Earnhardt Jr., Tony Stewart, and Jeremy Mayfield. Now, Jeff Gordon has won this race twice, but it's been a Penske Ford that has found its way to victory lane for the last 2 years, Jeremy Mayfield doing the honors in the year 2000. Given that, my choice as a dark horse, Ryan Newman. The rookie from Penske South has 4 top 10 finishes this year. He looked strong at Talladega before the engine gave out, and the youngster has always proved himself to be very fast on the big ovals. California sun just may shine on car number 12 this weekend. Keep your eyes on Ryan Newman. Reporting for Raceline, I'm Dan Hubbard.
For the last several weeks, Frank Kimmel has been racing with the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. He goes back to the ARCA Series this week, where he's the 3-time champion in that division, the ARCA REMAX Series. They're racing at Salem, Indiana this weekend.
Well, Salem Speedway will be our first short track race coming up this year, and again, it's my hometown racetrack, so I'm looking forward to going there. We'll have probably 10,000 people show up. The ARCA REMAX Series draws so many people there when they come. It's their biggest race of the year, and I think about 75% of them are Kimmel fans. So
you like that short track racing?
Yeah, it takes you back to the roots, and that's where I grew up, being on the short tracks. And of course, Salem, real fast, a lot of traffic, a lot of exciting things going on in Salem. So we're looking forward to going back.
After racing at Salem, Indiana, Frank plans to race at Richmond with the Winston Cup Series again next weekend. Well, Scott Riggs is the most recent first-time winner in the NASCAR ranks, at least the top 3 divisions, Winston Cup, Busch, and NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. He came from the trucks, now in the Busch Series, and everybody knew it was just a matter of time before Scott Riggs would win a NASCAR Busch Series race. As a matter of fact, even though he's a rookie in the Busch Series, he's probably going to be a contender for the championship in the 2002 series. This week, we go close up with Nesquik Ford driver Scott Riggs.
Just getting to know all the different drivers, probably the biggest thing. Just get to know how they drive, what their attitudes are, how they're going to race you on the racetrack, and that's probably been the biggest adjustment, the biggest change. But as far as adjustment for me in the race car driving, the guys on the team and the caliber team I have with Harold Holley making all the calls, I mean, they're the ones that really make me comfortable in the race car and able to go fast and be comfortable. So just have to thank people like Greg Pollux for taking a chance on a rookie who hadn't quite proven himself fully yet, and able to get in a good car and run well, and hopefully win some more races, and just try to be consistent. You know, that's the really key, is just trying to put ourselves in position to win some races. And in order to do that, you have to run all day long. You have to be patient, but yet you have to be aggressive at sometimes during the race, but you have to be cautiously aggressive. That's what Harold, my crew chief, tells me. So just being there, you know, putting ourselves in position to win some races, be there at the end. The wheelbase is shorter on the cars, and you can also tell that, of course, the body difference, the aerodynamic differences. But once you get in and do a little testing, I feel like I'm right at home in the cars. We go in separate directions sometimes at the racetrack trying to figure out what's going to be the best combination, but we always end up back at about the same spot. I've had everyone in the series recognize that I am a rookie, but at the same time give me a lot of respect back. So I feel pretty fortunate not to have had any conflicts. I mean, we definitely race hard together, and a couple of times I might have chopped someone off or someone chopped me off on the racetrack, but after the race or through our spotters or somehow, they would always communicate, you know, apologies and, you know, didn't mean to do it, and I think that shows a lot of respect for each other and be able to go back racing and not have any kind of hard feelings toward each other. It just means a lot to the whole team, really. You know, we can, you know, just it lets us know that our focus is in the right place, and we're on top of our ball game still, and we, you know, that all the guys on the Nesquik Ford always work awful hard. It also helps to have those Yates engines under the hood also. So a lot of people are really responsible for this happening, and you know, it's just good for us. It just puts us back on track. You know, we lost a race there at Vegas. Really thought we were going to have maybe a win or definitely a real solid finish, and end up finishing pretty far to the back because of an alternator problem. And you know, something like that really hurts you in the points and sort of gets you behind, and you're sort of trying to play catch up. So you know, right now I'm just happy to be able to get a win under our belt, and I think there's more to come.
Still to go today on Raceline. We'll check all the weekend news and a look into traction control and why NASCAR is making such a big deal about it. First, here's this week's championship points on our Mechanics Wear scoreboard. Getting the job done and getting it done right. That's what it's all about. What you need is the real stuff. Mechanics Wear gloves. Whether it's here or here, Mechanics Wear gloves make you want to work on something. They fit well, and unlike other gloves, they're not bulky, so you can get into those hard-to-reach places. You get the job done and get it done right. And after all, that's what it's all about. Get the real stuff. Mechanics Wear gloves. Now available at Napa Auto Parts, AutoZone, Pep Boys, CarQuest, and CSK Auto.
Hi, I'm Benny Parsons. Let me tell you about a product you need in your car. A proven winner, X1R engine treatment. I use it in my vehicles because I like the extra power and gas mileage X1R gives my car. And you know me, I like an engine that lets me feel the power. Do you know X1R is the only lubricant in the world that is certified space technology and has actually been inducted into the NASA Space Technology Hall of Fame? Use the only lubricant in the world that is certified space technology, X1R. It's proven.
Welcome back to this week's edition of Raceline. Time to check some news, but first you notice a Craftsman toolbox over here to my left. That toolbox is autographed by all the drivers in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, and we're going to give it away in about 8 weeks. You know about our Fans Forum contest. You answer our question of the week, and every 8 weeks we give away a Richard Petty driving experience. We'll announce this 8-week period's winner next week on the show, and then for the next 8-week segment, you'll get the Richard Petty driving experience and that toolbox. So be sure to answer our Fans Forum question. It'll be coming up later today here on Raceline. Right now, let's talk about some of the news. And one of the men who own a couple of trucks in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, a couple of cars in the Winston Cup Series, and a car in the Busch Series is a very lucky man this week, and that is Jack Roush, the Winston Cup team owner for many years. Of course, you've probably heard by now he was injured in an airplane crash outside of the Speedway area in Troy, Alabama last weekend. Jack Roush is still in satisfactory condition, but still serious at the University of Alabama at Birmingham Hospital. Petty Enterprises announced last week that Buckshot Jones is out of the Georgia Pacific Dodge, and Steve Grissom, who's been test driving for them for the last several years, is in. Ran his first race last week at Talladega. He'll run again this week at the California Speedway. Now, Bryant Frazier is crew chief for the Georgia Pacific Dodge. He says the problem is that Buckshot just was inexperienced.
I think it's just his experience. I mean, he run Busch for, I'm guessing, 5-6 years, and previous to that, I don't think he had a lot of experience. I think, he didn't run a lot of the local stuff and coming up, so I think it's just been experience over time.
You want to be here? You need to be part of the action? Then play Fantasy Cup Auto Racing, the original Winston Cup racing game. You build the team, you trade the drivers, and you win the money. Real money. Nearly $1 million in cash and prizes. 2 $25,000 grand prizes. Play online at fantasycup.com or call 1-800-877-RACE. Fantasy Cup Auto Racing. Be here.
I guess it shouldn't be any surprise to me that a lot of people are planning to go to Charlotte for the Lowe's Motor Speedway and the running of the Coca-Cola 600 and the Winston Open coming up the end of May. Last week on the show, we told you if you were going and wanted to ride in a sprint car, drop us an email. Well, we got tons of email from folks who said, yeah, we're going to Charlotte and we'd like to ride along at the Dave Blaney Outlaw Driving Experience. The two names we picked, first two that wrote in, were John Mathis from Albemarle, North Carolina, and Stephen Clark from Texas. He's driving all the way from Texas to come to Charlotte. Guys, thanks a lot for writing in. We're sending you all the information. We'll be contacting you this week about riding along the Dave Blaney Outlaw Driving Experience. That'll take place along with the World of Outlaws race at the short track, the dirt track across the street from the Lowe's Motor Speedway. We'll give the rest of you a chance to do that maybe later on in this year. Now, time for our Raceline Insider Report this week. You may have heard some talk in the last few weeks about traction control devices. NASCAR President Mike Helton made a big point of it in the drivers' meeting at Martinsville several weeks ago. Held one up. He said, guys, everybody knows what this is. We're not going to tolerate it. We feel like it's being used. It's hard to find, but if we find it, the results are going to be very, very serious. The penalties, big time. Claire B. Lang looks into what this is all about, this traction control device, on this week's Raceline Insider Report.
NASCAR Winston Cup President Mike Helton has delivered a message to drivers and crew chiefs. Traction control is not a part of Winston Cup racing, and anybody using it will be dealt with severely by NASCAR. What is traction control? I took a trip through the race shops to find out.
Basically what traction control does is we have so much horsepower that as the tires get hot, the cars tend to just spin the rear wheels coming off the corner. So it makes it real difficult for a driver to be fast at the end of a run. What traction control does, and it depends on how sophisticated you want to get, a sensor picks up how fast this tire turns. And if it starts turning faster than the front tires, there's a little system in there that knows that the tires are beginning to spin and will automatically take power away from the motor. And what it's doing is it's driving the car for the driver. And it kind of takes it out of the driver. Some drivers really would not prefer it at all because they want to be in total control. And there are some sports like Formula One where they used to run it a lot. All the driver had to do was step on the gas and turn the wheel, and the computer would take care of making sure that these rear tires would not spin.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about it. You know, I mean, we try to we do everything we can to do legally. You know, you work so hard at it, and you spend a lot of money trying to do things legally, and then you got people out that go out there and spend $1,000 and get something that'll outrun what you can do legally, and for them to be that strict on those type of things is a plus, because that lets you monopolize on what you do. You know, that's what you're here working for, is to get that stuff, you know, without having to cheat. So.
Yeah, it definitely got my attention. I mean, you saw him when he walked up there and he had the little devices in his hands and everything, and they're pretty small. I was like, wow. But yeah, it said a pretty strong message that he didn't really say what they were going to do, but they just didn't want to be the one to make an example out of you. And I definitely don't want to be the one to make an example out of, because I feel it's probably going to be more on the lines of suspension than fines for probably a great number of, probably weeks, maybe months, because I think they're going to be pretty strict on that. And you hear a lot of rumors of them finding them on racetracks after races and all kind of stuff. So yeah, there needs to be a handle on that. We need to go back to racing and let the crews and the crew chiefs do it rather than electronic.
I haven't used one yet, but I don't think we're going to, because I think NASCAR is really stepping up that program and looking for them more, which is good. I just soon not have to worry about messing with them, and just to know that no one else is either.
Message delivered by Mike Helton: no traction control allowed. And here in the race shops, it's evident that message has been received. For Raceline, I'm Claire B. Lang.
Hi, this is Ashton Lewis, driver of the number 46 Silver Air Patrol Chevrolet Monte Carlo, with this week's Take Tip.
In this week's Take Tip, I'd like to talk about the shock dyno. I kind of pointed out a little while ago on the truck. This is a shock dyno that we use. It's a Rohr dyno. What we do is we'll build a shock and we'll change valving in it, we'll change a piston in it, and then we want to see what it does and what kind of effects it has. This machine here, you actually hook the shock up into the two clevises here, and it'll run at different frequencies or different inches per second. And what it does is it reads a force at that given inch per second, and then it takes it over to the computer and relays that information to the computer and actually draw a graph out for us. As you can see here, this is the velocity of the shock and what it was running at, and we run them anywhere between 0 inches per second and 10 inches per second. And what that tells us is that shock moving different speeds, what kind of forces it creates at those speeds, and this is the force area here. This is the compression side of the shock, which is as the shock is actually folded together, and then the bottom part is the rebound shock, and when it's actually extended. So we look at different areas on that graph and kind of get a comparison of what we had before and what we're trying to do now. And then also, if that shock works on the race car and I like it, we'll come back and we'll have a good graph of it and something we can repeat and come back to later. So say we tested it and it worked well, we come back here for the next race, or come back for the race here at Richmond. We can go back and rebuild these shocks and make sure they come back to what we had on the car when we were here.
This is Ashton Lewis for the Silver Air Patrol Tech Tip. We'll see you again next week.
The Civil Air Patrol has over 60,000 volunteers who share their love of aviation and community service.
More of today's show right after this.
You want to be here? You need to be part of the action? Then play Fantasy Cup Auto Racing, the original Winston Cup racing game. You build the team, you trade the drivers, and you win the money. Real money. Nearly $1 million in cash and prizes. 2 $25,000 grand prizes. Play online at fantasycup.com or call 1-800-877-RACE. Fantasy Cup Auto Racing. Be here.
We're back on this week's edition of Raceline, heading off to the California Speedway this weekend for the Napa Auto Parts 500 and the Auto Club 300 NASCAR Busch Series race. Maybe if you're living in that part of the country, we'll see you out there. If not, we'll bring you all the news from California Speedway next week here on Raceline. Well, time to look into our fans forum question from last week. We were talking about Winston Cup drivers racing in Busch Series races. That is a popular subject. Every time we ask that question, we get hundreds and hundreds of emails and letters from you. Just about everybody agreed that the Winston Cup guys should stay in the Winston Cup races. Let the Busch guys go out and work their way up to the Winston Cup level, because after all, that's what basically it is, a stepping stone division for guys to move up and eventually race in Winston Cup. Most of you said the biggest thing about this is the fact that the Winston Cup guys take some of the points, and the Busch guys are the ones running for the championship. Best said by Bob Ritker of Onalaska, Wisconsin. Here's Bob's letter. I feel that with the fan support the Cup drivers bring, it is a big boost to the Busch Series. It allows the fans a chance to see their favorite Cup drivers at a Busch race ticket price. But for the points race in the Busch Series, NASCAR should consider awarding points to drivers who are declared drivers for the series for the year. I would not like to lose a championship due to being beat out by one position by a Cup driver. Overall, I agree with allowing the Cup drivers to race at any event they wish, if it allows for more fan exposure, but does not hurt the Busch Series regular drivers. Bob, we're sending you a print from the Sam Bass Gallery in Charlotte, North Carolina, and you qualify for the Richard Petty Driving Experience. And don't forget, starting next week, we'll start asking questions for the next 8-week segment. Then you can win the Richard Petty Driving Experience and that Craftsman Toolbox. Now, this week's question on our fan forum. Kenny Wallace, taken from 5th position at Talladega to 21st because he went below the yellow line. It appeared to me he was shoved below the yellow line. Should it be treated that way? Should there be a yellow line that you stay in? Should there be a boundary marking on a racetrack? Remember, Dale Earnhardt won a lot of races by cutting down low on the racetrack. Is the yellow line the right way to go? And should Kenny Wallace have been penalized? Send us your response to this week's Fans Forum question through our website at racelineonline.com. If we pick yours as the best answer of the week, you'll receive a print from the Sam Bass Gallery and maybe get a chance to race in the Richard Petty Driving Experience. Now, in Producer's Corner, Mike Briault is talking about just that thing. Boundary lines on racetracks. Are they needed? Aren't concrete walls enough? Here's Mike in this week's Producer's Corner.
The topic for today's Producer's Corner is boundaries. It's something that all professional and amateur sports have. It's something that even as kids we had with most of the games we played. And last week at the Talladega Superspeedway, prior to the race of the drivers' meeting, Mike Helton warned drivers, don't go down below that yellow line, because if you do, we're going to penalize you. Well, late in the race, actually towards the last couple of laps, Kenny Wallace dipped below that yellow line and was moved from his 5th place that he was in at that time to a finishing 21st position. Now, I don't agree with what NASCAR did for a couple reasons. First of all, if you were watching the race, Jeff Hammond explained that as these cars go around the track at 185, 190 miles an hour, a tremendous amount of turbulence is formed around the car as they're moving air. When they cluster 2, 3, and 4 wide in packs of 8 or 9 cars, that turbulence can get so great that it will actually move a car without the driver even assisting it. And I think that's exactly what happened with Kenny Wallace. I don't think he intentionally dropped below that line, and if you watch the replay, I think you'll agree with me. Now, do I think NASCAR should have penalized him? Well, maybe they should have penalized him because he did go below the yellow line. But in other sports, hockey, baseball, football, there's an instant replay. They look at the tapes. They try and take the human element out of play and do it as fairly as they can. And I think in this instance, NASCAR should have done the same thing. Kenny, if you're watching the show, I don't care what NASCAR says, I still think you finished in 5th place. That was a great run for you in a car that you'd only been in for a very short time with a crew that you were somewhat unfamiliar with. And I think that's a great accomplishment. And Michael Waltrip, if you had the opportunity to put him in that car again, I urge you to do it because I think it's a great combination. I'm Mike Briault, producer of Raceline. That's my opinion, and it might just be right.
Next week on Raceline, we'll talk night racing as the Winston Cup Series gets ready for Richmond under the lights, and an up-close visit with Ward Burton crew chief Tommy Baldwin. Don't forget to answer this week's Fans Forum question. Just go to our website at racelineonline.com. More of today's Raceline right after this.
You want to be here? You need to be part of the action? Then play Fantasy Cup Auto Racing, the original Winston Cup racing game. You build the team, you trade the drivers, and you win the money. Real money. Nearly $1 million in cash and prizes. 2 $25,000 grand prizes. Play online at fantasycup.com or call 1-800-877-RACE. Fantasy Cup Auto Racing. Be here.
Want to try this? You can do it. Call the Dave Blaney Outlaw Driving Experience today at 1-877-7-OUTLAW.
That's going to do it for this week's edition of Raceline. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to answer our fans forum question. Go to our website at racelineonline.com. Next week, we'll talk about Richmond, the nighttime racing. First time this year under the lights. It's the Pontiac Excitement 400. We'll talk with some drivers about racing at night, how much they like that, having a Sunday afternoon off. And we'll go close up with Tommy Baldwin, crew chief of the Caterpillar Dodge, for driver Ward Burton. All that coming up here next week on Raceline. We'll see you then.
Raceline is brought to you by Mechanics Wear. Wear what the mechanics wear. By X1R, run with the best. By MRN, the voice of NASCAR. And by the Richard Petty Driving Experience.